invite our once absent speaker, who is back with us again, Sue Witter. Yay!
Well, thank you everyone, and thank you for the beautiful card. It's still sitting on my dresser, and so it's one of the first things I see every morning when I wake up. Last month I was supposed to be here, and I was going to talk, the title of my talk was, I Believe This Belongs to You. And so when Carol said I'm going to use the same talk this time, I went, oh, well, you know, a lot's happened in my brain since then, so it's kind of hard to tell whether that will fit or not. And so I thought about it, and I changed the title to Yours, Mine, and Ours, but it still holds a lot of the same information. And in fact, what I realized this morning is what I do is I have notes, and then I change them before I go to bed, and then I change them again in the morning. So then it comes out however it comes out. But anyway, what I realized this morning on the latest rotation of notes is that really, had I tried to give the talk last month, it would have been a partially incomplete one. Because there's always things I listen to on the way up here on the drive, and so what I listened to on the way up was kind of the piece that was missing. So here we go. I started down this path of, I Believe This Belongs to You is actually a title of the song that I'm going to use for special music today. But I started down this whole path because I have been fascinated of late by neuroplasticity, by the fact that we can change the neural pathways in our brain. And we can change them with positive emotion. And so I've been listening to Rick Hansen and Lisa Wimberger and a lot of people who are really learned on this subject. And one of the things that when I heard Rick Hansen say this, I almost cried. He said, our brains are like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for happy ones. And I went, well, that's just awful. I don't like that one little bit. But he said, you know, but don't give up heart, because a part of what you can do by conscious use of positive emotion is create new neural pathways and strengthen the neural pathways for happiness that are already there. And they go on at great length, which is far more skilled in description than I could ever give you, about the neural pathways of the brain. But Lisa Wimberger has a process called neurosculpting, which is really quite fascinating. And she has the ability to take all that hard brain science and turn it into something that someone at my education level with that sort of thing can grasp. So she told a story. She talks about the fact that there are certain conditions that can cause us to create a neural pathway. And it has to do with how open we are to an experience. So she tells the story of a 5-year-old little girl who's going to go camping for the first time. And her family's all excited, and she's all excited, and they buy a tent, and they put the tent in the living room so she can run in and out and play in there and sleep in there, and she gets her own sleeping bag, she gets her own pillow. She's so excited, and so when the time finally comes for the family to go camping, they go, they set up the tent, they have the little fire pit, and she's off all day playing in the woods and swimming and all these new experiences. And in that time, when we're having all these new experiences, the brain is primed to create a neural pathway. So at the end of her day, they're in the tent, and she's just had such a fabulous day, and she says goodnight to her parents. As she's crawled into her sleeping bag, she puts her face down on her pillow, and there's a spider.
That's not fun.
Yeah. And so she's just freaked. And it takes a long time for the parents to wind her down and get her to sleep, and they have to shake the bedding out and stuff. And so she said, then you fast forward to when she's going to camp in high school. And she has now got a flashlight, and she checks that sleeping bag out of there. And when she's married, her husband gets the job. And when they have kids, she tells those kids, you be sure to check in that sleeping bag and on that pillow, there are no spiders in there. So what she's saying about the story is that what happens to us, what happens to our brain is our brain only knows now.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? It only knows now.
Yeah.
So you think about something that happened 5 years ago, it's happening from your brain's perspective now. Your brain only knows now. So you have a memory, so that's what happens, they say, and so Lisa Wimberger does a great deal of work with people with PTSD. And the brain research says that a part of what happens is that when you remember those events, the brain is responding to them in the present. Even though it's an event from the past, the brain is responding in the present. And so when we think about how we respond to life and how we have this fascinating ability to go back into the memories of our past and rummage around until we find something, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and we bring it into the present, it literally brings it into the present. The brain is then firing down a new neural pathway that says, here you go, this is now. So then she talked about the thing which actually triggered the talk, and that is, she said, have you ever been having a really great day? A great day. The weather's great, things have gone well at work, or whatever it is you're doing, you know, it's like, it's been just a perfect, you just think the world rocks. I love this. And you're cruising along, and then you go home, and your significant other, husband, wife, mother, father, children, don't even give you the opportunity to say hello. They're not having the best day. They're not having a good day at all. And there's the snarly face and the nasty, you know, it's like, and they're not happy. Have you ever had that happen?
Oh, yeah.
How long before your good goes right out the window?
Immediately.
Right? And what she says is, and what brain researchers say is that literally your stuff has come into my brain, and the brain doesn't, it always distinguishes only now. It also really doesn't distinguish you or me. You're having a crappy day? Excuse me, I'm sure that's a spiritual term, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's good though.
Yeah.
We know it.
You're having a bad day,
We all know it.
and you're having a scowly face and a nasty attitude. Know that your stuff is going in other people's face, just as their stuff comes into yours. And so she has a whole series of exercises that she has you do to learn to manage more effectively this process of being able to keep our stuff in our space, and when other people's stuff tries to get deposited in our space, to say thank you, but no thank you. And so that distinction, that for you hear me say often, I frequently get confused. There's God's job, and there's my job. There's God's job, there's my job. Well, here's another one that I frequently, and most of us get frequently confused about. My stuff, your stuff. I think it's my job to fix you, change you, correct you, enlighten you, transform you, that all of, you know, it's like, no, there's my side of the street and your side of the street. I can only keep clean my side of the street. I can't fix you, I can't change you, I can't make you want to be different. Even though there's a part of me that was an alcohol and drug treatment counselor for years and understands the concept of intervention, and that kind of goes like this. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But you can run him around the pond until he's good and thirsty. That's kind of intervention in a nutshell. But in spite of that, it's not your job how the outcome of someone else's life happens. And that's very frustrating for many of us, because we have an if-then happiness. If this happens, then I'll be happy. And my two favorite examples of that is, if I could just get the right job, I know everything would be okay. And you get that right job, and it's fabulous for a little while, But sooner or later, it's if I could just get rid of this job. If I could just get rid of this job, my life would be better. Same thing with mates. If I could just get this person to love me, I know I would be okay. Fast forward down the road, if I could just get rid of this guy, I know. So we make it all up any way we go, right? We assign the meaning. And so this process of being able to make that distinction between my stuff and your stuff really is about first being aware that it's happening. So that if I see you scowl, my brain responds to that scowl as if it's happening in me. The reverse is true. If I see you smile, and that kind of smile that lights up your eyes and makes your eyes twinkle and not one of these. You know, that, but actual smile. That's why people respond to smiles. Because our brain goes, this is good. This is good that's happening to me. So the process is one of really being able to see, to stop and see, I get to choose. That yes, I may have an experience where I respond to your bad day. And it's very instinctive almost, because our brain's doing it without our conscious awareness. And so it's always about, what we teach here is it's about being in the moment and bringing it up to a conscious level. So this process of yours, mine, and ours is to really say, it's mine to manage on my side of the street and only my side of the street. So there's a teacher that I work with a great deal, and I was just stunned the first time he said this. He said, have you ever had an issue in your life that you have worked really, really hard on? And through the sheer force of will, you are able to make a difference in that behavior, in that thought pattern, in that feeling, whatever it may be. And when you relax the force of will, it's right back. His philosophy is, the pain you're trying to heal is not yours. Most likely, if you look at it, it's a pain that you picked up from someone or somewhere else. Frequently, it's a parent, because in family psychology, the children carry the pain of the parents.
Yeah.
And so, rather than that his philosophy is stop. Stop trying to heal that which is not yours to heal. And just like Lisa Wimberger's meditation, he has a whole process that you go through where literally you give that back. So there's the song that I'm going to use today, I believe it belongs to you, is a story about Martin Luther King. And they don't know whether it actually really happened. They know that similar things happened, so it's one of those, could be urban legend, could be combined stories. There's some, for example, there's some, like the Bible, some biblical historians say, was there a Sermon on the Mount where 5,000 people came? You know, maybe yes, maybe no. Did he give a lot of big talks where a lot of people came? That really the Gospels are the combined memory of the disciples, and so who knows whether it was one specific event. So that's kind of how the notion of this story is. And the story goes like this. Martin Luther King is in a crowd, and a very well-dressed white man comes up to him and says, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And he says, "Yes, I am." And the man spits on it.
Oh.
And they can attest to the fact that that did happen. But the story then goes, he took out his handkerchief, and the description is, he wipes the hate from his suit.
Good.
And he gave the man the handkerchief and said, "I believe this belongs to you."
Oh, wow.
And the thing that's really amazing about the song is in the lyrics, it's consistently talks about, it's a man who stood in his truth, who was so clear as to who he was, that he was able to stand in that truth. So part of that then, so the second piece of how this talk all comes together for me is right now we're doing some studying of what's called the meta model in leadership, especially church leadership. And one of the things they talk a great deal about is codependence versus empowerment. And sadly, churches have a lot of codependence. And so a part of the process of learning to shift from codependence to empowerment, they have some interesting definitions that they look at. So, on my notes here, for my class on Tuesday night. So they say codependency is unhealthy love and a tendency to behave in an overly passive or excessively caretaking ways that harm one's relationships and quality of life. It also involves placing, this is the really important part to me, it also involves placing a lower priority on one's own needs while being excessively preoccupied with the needs of others. And empowering someone happens when one is supporting another to find and develop their own gifts, talents, and abilities. So a lot of the class was talking about the importance of setting boundaries. And they say being able to set and hold clear boundaries is one of the essential skills for creating and living an extraordinary life. Boundaries are also intricately linked to personal responsibility. And then it says, boundaries are quite simply the limits that you set to define what you will and will not do for yourself, as well as what you will and will not accept or tolerate from others. And that setting and maintaining clear boundaries sends a strong message that you value yourself. That you value yourself. Now, normally and there's a great deal of discussion about compassion in the process. And so Pema Chodron, who's one of my favorite people, talks about compassion as the capacity to be comfortable enough with your own darkness that you can sit in the darkness with someone else until they're ready to have you help them walk out into the light. So this process, so a part of what we do is we think, if I value myself, if I say no, if I set boundaries, then I'm not being compassionate to you, or I'm not being loving and supportive. And really, that process of being able to shift from knowing what is mine and what is yours is just as important when it comes to how we interact with each other. Not just whether I take on your energy or not, but to say, just like in the song, and so listen closely to the lyrics when it plays, that after he gives back the hate from his suit, it talks about, I love you, I can lift you up, I know how you feel, and I've been there.
Wow.
Because we all have. And so compassion is being able to set a boundary and still be loving. So that's the ours part. The ours part, we talk a lot about the concept of unity and oneness. And that process is one that frequently gets twisted with codependence, right? With that process of saying, well, it's my job to fix you then. As opposed to what happens to me happens to everyone. What happens to another happens to me. It happens to us all. That in consciousness, our job is to set a boundary and then simply respond with love. So on the way up, as always, there's things that get listened to, and this time it was a retreat that I actually went to with Pema Chodron in New York. But she was talking, they finally just released the conference proceedings, and she was talking about the Bodhisattva vow. And that is a Buddhist belief that where you make a commitment to stay present and committed to being a loving presence in the world until all beings are free. Well, that's a mighty big task.
Yeah.
A mighty big task. But that's what the Bodhisattva vow is, until all beings are awake and free. And so at the beginning of every teaching, she has kind of that commitment that are to stay awake until all beings are awake and free. And that kind of goes with that concept of oneness. So in Science of Mind, we talk about race consciousness or collective consciousness. And that is that that's the collective experience of everything that's happened in all of the past and all of the present. It's that thought process or belief system in the ethers. And Thomas Troward, I just got done teaching the Roots class this summer, and Thomas Troward talks about the fact that if we aren't making conscious and aware choices, we simply then fall victim to the law of averages, to odds and probabilities. So X percentage of women will get breast cancer, X percentage of people will have this, X percentage of people will have that, because we don't make conscious, awake, and aware choices. If we don't do that, we simply are in this flow of race consciousness, kind of being buffeted around. But the other side of that coin is that we can make a difference in the race consciousness. We can make a difference by what we believe. We can make a difference by what we do. We can make a difference by our commitment to see that there indeed is one mind and that we are all expressions of that one. And so this process is getting to the point where we can say, I'm going to make a conscious choice to stay awake. I'm going to make a conscious choice to stay aware. So Kevin Children talks about a Buddhist teacher that she studied with, or that actually her teacher studied with, and when he was a young boy, he described that someday he would go to America and he would teach these principles to people. But he said you may find that people are much more committed to staying asleep than they are to being awake. Because that's just how it goes with us. And so this process of saying, I'm going to choose to stay awake as much as I can. None of us stay awake all the time. None of us, none of us, none of us. But I'm going to choose to stay awake, and I'm going to choose to respond with love and compassion. So Brene Brown has a delightful example of boundaries and compassion. And she says, here's what I learned. The heart of compassion is really acceptance. The better we are at accepting ourselves and others, the more compassionate we become. While it's difficult to accept people when they're hurting us or taking advantage of us, walking all over us, this research has taught me that if we really want to practice compassion, we have to start by setting boundaries and holding people accountable for their behavior. So it's a very fine balance, and that's why I love the song I Believe It Belongs to You, because there's a clear boundary that's set, a clear something that says, here you go, this is your hate, not mine. But in the lyrics, there's some exquisite things. It says, I will lift you up and do what I can do. I see your heart, I feel your pain, I've been there too. I will hold you high while you do what you have to do. I am clear who is standing here. I believe this belongs to you. So we have to be clear who's standing here. That indeed we are the presence and the activity of the Spirit, just as much as they are. If I'm clear that my stuff is my stuff and your stuff is your stuff, even when there's pain, it's much easier to be compassionate. So in the training, Pema teaches a practice that she calls the fear practice, F-E-A-R, and in a lot of New Thought it will be false evidence appearing real. But this is what she has. It's first find, so if something happens that we don't consider ideal, there's something that happens that we respond to adversely, the first step is to find where it dwells in your body. You know how that goes when something happens and you go, and you can feel it in your chest. Or there are times when because I tend to respond with anger more than I should perhaps, and it feels like my brain's gonna explode. You know, it's like find where it's dwelling in your body. And the second step, the E, then is embrace it. Not an easy task. If things aren't looking so good and they're not feeling so bad, why on earth would you want to embrace it? Well, in science and mind we teach what? What you resist? Persists. And so there's a part of me that goes, well, I don't know that I'm going to embrace it. I'll try to not resist it. Maybe.
Wait and see.
Maybe not. Maybe some days I'm better at it than others. But embrace it? Oh my, no. But what I've learned over the years is that being able to stand still and embrace it is a far faster way out the other side than resistance. And there's a Buddhist teacher that I've heard speak many times, and he talks about the big okay. And that is the first step for everything, regardless of what's happening, regardless of how it feels, is it's the big okay. And the old social activist in me goes, well, no, this is an injustice. But it's that balance. It's that I'm clear who's standing here, and I believe this belongs to you. It takes that clear picture to be able to stand in who you are, to be able to have the courage to embrace it. And then A in the process is allowing it to simply fall away, allowing the storyline to fall away. So how many of us love our story? I love my story. When I'm in my story, I love my story. I will tell it over and over, and I will try to get you to agree with me, because if you agree with me, then I know I'm right. God knows I love to be right. So let the storyline dissolve. Just allow it to dissolve, and then abide with the feeling. So in our culture, we really don't like to do that. We eat at it, we drink at it, we smoke at it, we drug at it, we have sex at it, we shop at it, we watch TV at it. You know, there's a whole host of things that we do to not feel. So abiding with the feeling